Memo to self. Beware of ghosts, beware of bridges, and beware of anyone who wants you to wear a bear costume. In the daylight, that is. Welcome to Channel 8.5. Hello, and thank you for joining us at Channel 8.5, a show all about movies and TV and pop culture. My name is Joe Galena.
And I'm Andrew Hanna.
Andrew, how are you doing today, sir?
I am doing great, Joe. Today is a Watchlist episode, spooky edition, as Joe might say.
Spooky Channel 8.5.
This week, we are talking about what we have been watching as of late, and we are going with a little bit of a Halloween theme. We'll be talking about Black Box and The Lie, the new Blumhouse films that came out on Amazon
Prime.
Right? Everyone has plus next to it.
Exactly.
Amazon Plus.
Exactly. Disney Plus, Hulu Plus.
And then we're also talking about Midsommar and Crimson Peak. So we're starting with the new and then slowly cranking it down to the old.
And if you didn't know what The Lie and Black Box are, don't worry. It's okay. No one else does. Because it seems like I've been asking around. I've been taking the pulse of the people in my living room, Andrew, because I don't go anywhere anymore because I can't. So it's just me wandering around my house. But it seems like people don't know what this is. The Lie and Black Box, again, they're two new movies released last week through Blumhouse Presents.
Yeah.
Obviously, who did Insidious and Sinister and known for horror movies, right?
Yeah.
Paranormal Activity. They released them in conjunction with Amazon Prime. But it doesn't seem like it's a real wide release. You know, when Hulu has released stuff, when Netflix has released stuff, it's been widely publicized, things like that. This one, they didn't try.
Yeah, it feels like Blumhouse doesn't have the household reputation that they thought they did, and so they were kind of banking on the name to draw people in. But I also feel like Amazon is almost finding a niche in like straight to video type films, because to echo Christina's assessment of these, she said they felt like Hallmark horror films, which I think is pretty apt.
I think it is apt, and I think it piggybacks off of what we were talking about last week with Monsterland. It kind of falls within the same tone and feel of elevated horror, quote unquote, and putting drama and family drama and one might say melodrama, especially with The Lie, before the horror aspect. And I would even push back on saying that these are horror films.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Because I don't think they have scares in them. They're not scary. And I would even say they're more psychological thrillers than anything else. Black Box more than The Lie.
Yeah.
I'd say they're mismarketed as horror. And Blumhouse itself, which does have a name. I think people do know now what Blumhouse is and what to expect from a Blumhouse movie.
They know what Blumhouse has made, but I would almost argue that A24 has a more well-known name than Blumhouse does.
Do you think so? See, I think the reverse. I think that the common man, the regular folk, Andrew, you're in Hollywood, you're in LA with those film people. I'm on the ground. In my
liberal elites.
Exactly. I'm boots on the ground in my living room talking to people. I think that Blumhouse does have more of a recognizable brand of low budget horror. I think A24 has more of a prestige type of image.
Yeah.
But when you see Blumhouse, you go, okay, those are the guys who made Paranormal Activity. Those are the guys who made all of the horror movies that have made a bunch of money that were really cheap. And maybe I'm not the right person to ask to talk about this either, because I know exactly who Blumhouse and A24 are. So maybe I don't know anything. I don't know.
But even me as a filmmaker didn't recognize the name Blumhouse. And maybe that's because I don't watch as many horror films.
Maybe.
But I think they're a good place to start. So we'll start with The Lie and Black Box.
Yeah, we'll start with the Lie first, because The Lie is the much more interesting of the two. Probably not for good reason.
I like the concept of these films, but...
Did you?
Yeah, I mean, given the genre, I didn't mind them as much, but they were just terribly executed. They felt lazy and incredibly on the nose in a way that felt very amateur. I mean, even considering what you said about the lack of marketing, it was also made in a manner that gave you the impression that they didn't care as much. So why should I? And it was just careless and on the nose.
It's very on the nose. It's not subtle at all. And it's very melodramatic. And we're going to talk a little bit later about melodrama done very, very well.
Yeah.
But in this one, it was not. And to set it up, if you haven't seen The Lie, which I'm going to guess you haven't, but it's okay. Channel 8.5's got you. A father and daughter are on their way to a dance camp when they spot the girl's best friend, the daughter's best friend, sitting on the side of the road. She's waiting for a bus. When they stop to offer her a ride to the camp, things go awry. And what happens is that this is sort of the pitch of the movie, so it's not really a spoiler. The daughter, played by Joey King, accidentally Not accidentally.
Not
She
accidentally.
accidentally, she
Yeah,
blatantly says,
I pushed her.
pushes her friend off of a bridge, falls into a river, and dies.
Icy river.
Yeah, upstate New York. The river is kind of shallow, very a lot of jagged rocks. There's a point where Peter Skarsgård, who plays the dad, when he's looking for the girl that falls in the river, he just jumps in that river.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
amazed. I
Yeah,
go,
I was
"That
like,
river cold."
"Homie." Yeah.
I was like, "Dude, you're gonna get hypothermia. That's gonna be 2 bodies on the ground." And then after the daughter, Joey King's character, Kayla, admits to what she did. So Peter Skarsgård plays her dad. His character's name is Jay. Mireille Enos plays the mom. She's not in a lot. I recognize her from some stuff, but I could not pull anything from where I'd seen her recently. But she was in that show of The Killing that was on AMC that was apparently very good. That got canceled early. I did not watch it, but she's been in some stuff.
She did a good job, I think, and I love Peter Sarsgaard, but
Really? So did you like the performances in this?
mm,
I didn't. I think this is
it felt like
a
Hallmark.
weird
Yeah.
misfire. I agree with you. It did feel like Hallmark, and it felt like a weird misfire from Peter Sarsgaard. I love Peter Sarsgaard. I completely agree with you. But it did feel so artificial and false. Their entire relationship. Jay and Rebecca's marriage felt false. Joey King's character is supposed to be 15 years old. I never bought her as 15 years old.
I bought it.
Yeah, I
And
always thought
enough
she
to
looked
where
too
I was
old.
like, whatever, that didn't bother me that much. I think they just weren't given a lot to work with. And the dialogue, the character motivations were just so I mean, the dad of the girl's best friend,
Cass Anvar. So I
yeah,
like him because
I
he's
like
in
him,
the
but
show The Expanse, and when he showed up, I went, "Oh, hey, man."
he's great, but dude, what you're not making the situation any better for yourself,
No.
chasing down this girl in your car and then grabbing her by the shirt. I mean, come on. It just was not
The pacing was so slow, and then even all the performances, they're so overwrought, so again, melodramatic in a way that
yeah.
I did not care for. This movie was made in 2018 and sat on the shelf until now, and I get why.
I feel like Amazon just had a bunch of films that they bought and then decided, you know what, let's just release these all together. It reminds me of the 4 movie DVDs or video cassettes that were straight to video,
Yeah, it's funny you
like
say
back
that
in the
because
day.
Blumhouse and I guess Amazon have this deal where they're releasing 2 movies back to back last week. October
Yeah.
6th, this came out, which was this one, The Lie and Black Box. And then there's gonna be 2 released next week on the same day as well. So you're right, it is kinda like the 4 movie Freddy and Jason pack.
Yeah, exactly. And you're just like, okay, I mean, I guess this is good to put on when I have like a date for like a Amazon Prime and chill. Is that a thing? I don't know if that's a thing.
I mean, unless you're Amazon priming and chilling with yourself because you can't have people over.
Amazon Prime and deliver, maybe? Yeah.
Ah,
Deliver the
see, there
package.
you go,
Yeah. Okay.
Amazon. See,
All right.
Amazon should be hiring you.
I will say though, this definitely held my attention and curiosity because I just wanted to know. I just want to know what is going on because I had a feeling that there was something else. Like it wasn't just straightforward.
It couldn't all be just straightforward because
Yeah.
the entire, essentially first 2 acts of the movie are following more Peter Sarsgaard's character and Mireille Enos's character as they deal with her daughter's lie and how that affects with their relationship. They cover up the murder, right? And they say she'll be
Yeah.
tried as an adult. They don't want to ruin their 15-year-old daughter's life. And the strain that that puts on a divorced couple, because they are divorced,
Yeah.
the strain it puts on their relationship and their family dynamic as covering up a body would. But it wasn't scary. And it was,
No, not at all. There wasn't anything supernatural or anything like that. It wasn't a horror film. It was definitely a psychological thriller.
and even then, I wouldn't say it was very thrilling.
It wasn't thrilling. Honestly, the whole time I was pausing it, and Christine and I were just trying to find out what, like, guessing because you just can't take it seriously. You get pulled out
No.
like every 5 minutes by some stupid thing that happens, and so I just kept pausing. You're like, "Oh, what do you think would happen?" Whereas I don't usually try to surmise. I don't try to figure it out, but I just did not care at all.
And you can't talk about this movie and without talking about the endings. So I do want to give people the opportunity.
I'll put time codes in the description. Jump off if you want to waste an hour and a half of your life.
And then, if you don't want to know maybe the funniest thing that I've seen in a long time at the end of this movie, you've been warned.
Did you see it coming?
In a way, Marvel movies and superhero movies have taught me that if you don't see a body, then they're not dead. And
That's
you
true,
never
yeah.
see the body.
Yeah.
You see it in a dream sequence.
Which you don't know whether or not it was a dream
Well,
sequence.
I mean, she wakes up. I can't remember even who
Yeah,
it was.
it makes
I don't remember
sense.
who it
It was the
was.
mom.
It was the mom? Okay.
Yeah, when she wakes up and the daughter is making breakfast and you're just like, you should get her checked.
You're acting very calm, you crazy
Yeah.
sociopath, about the murder you just committed. So I've been trained, right? No body, no crime.
No, it makes sense, yeah.
But then when when her friend shows up again, just in the garage, going, "Oh yeah, it was all a prank." It was the funniest thing. I laughed so much. I thought it was hilarious. Just and this is where it turned into genius. It turned into the greatest comedy I've ever seen in my life. Because Peter Sarsgaard and Jay and Rebecca are just staring at this girl, going, "You crazy psychopath."
Yeah.
We have because they kill her dad.
Yeah.
He's like they catch
They're literally
her
wiping his blood off of their car in the garage
yes.
when the girl walks in.
And then she waltzes in on her phone being like, "Oh, hey guys. So I just wanted to spend some time with my boyfriend. Hope that's cool." And they're just blank faced, looking at her as if the hell that they have gone through for seemingly no reason. And when Rebecca touches her face just to be like, "Are you real?" I
I thought she was putting her father's DNA on her to see if they can like turn it around on
You
her.
overthought this way too much.
And I was like, there's no way that this is just gonna be
Incorrect,
it.
sir.
Like no joke. I'm not even joking, Joe. During the scene when she's cleaning Peter Sarsgaard's nose after he gets punched by the girl's dad, they
Sam.
start giggling or whatever, and then the little girl's outside of the window, and I was like, watch this turn out to be just a messed up parent trap.
Yeah.
Like,
It was.
that's what it was. She was like, "Oh, maybe murder will bring my parents back together."
I just wanted everything to go back to the way it was. Well, I guess mission accomplished in one way. On the other hand, you're all wanted for murder.
Oh my
So
lord.
not great. It was so hilarious. I wonder if I was reading that because I read some interviews afterwards and just to see the reaction. Apparently both Joey King and Peter Sarsgaard say they had the exact same reaction. Peter Sarsgaard said, "And when I read the page where the daughter comes back in the garage, I closed the script book and threw it against the wall." And I go,
But then
"Yeah,
I
it
saw
makes
the
sense."
paycheck.
Yeah, right? I mean, it was a low budget thing though. He's not buying a beach house with this.
I don't know why he did this. With the knowledge that I now have that this was made in 2018 and did not get released until now, and
Mm-mm.
now is basically going straight to Amazon. I mean, why would you do something like this? Peter Sarsgaard, you can pick any role out there. They'll give it to you. This was a solid meh.
This was a solid meh for about 50 minutes, and then it goes from good to great, sir.
All of these Blumhouse films, honestly, your life is not going to be enriched in any way by watching these, but it's not the worst possible way you can spend an hour and a half, I
You
guess.
know,
I
I
don't
wonder if this would be a good so bad it's good type movie. It does have the
There's not
campiness.
enough.
See, it does have the enough campy stuff in it though.
Like what? Other than the end.
The melodramatic stuff where Jay is yelling at Kayla. I mean, I guess it's too heavy. And
Yeah, it's
Peter
just
Sarsgaard is a good enough actor to make that kind of believable. I guess
yeah, exactly.
it's not cheesy enough to be in that, so I guess not. And it doesn't move at enough of a pace to warrant that kind of treatment up until the end.
Overall, this is a hard pass.
So let's move on to Black Box then. So
Yeah.
you did not like Black Box either.
I like the concept of Black Box. I
I
mean,
like
it's
the concept of Black Box too.
Memento meets Inception, I guess. But again, it just the acting and writing was not great. Even the brother's performance was so bad at times. It's not his fault. He could have just been directed poorly or he really didn't have much to work with, but it was so bad at times that I thought it was implying that he was somehow involved in the plot against Nolan.
I'll set this one up too in case you haven't seen it. After losing his wife and memory in a car accident, a single father undergoes an experimental treatment that causes him to question who he really is, essentially questions his sanity, questions if he is the person he thinks that he is. And in order to regain his memories, again, agrees to this experimental treatment by a doctor played by Theo Huxtable's mom, who is very good, I think, in what she's given to do.
Yeah.
Although it's a very obvious role. She plays a essentially mad scientist. I don't know if that's a spoiler to say, but no scientist in any sort of a psychological thriller has ever been anything other than a mad scientist. So
She also got them crazy eyes, so
she does, doesn't she?
in that movie at least.
The main performance, and again, it falls into the category of, I would say, elevated horror, although again, there's not a lot. It's more scary and it's more horrific than The Lie certainly was. It has more horror elements.
Yeah.
When the main character, his name is Nolan, he's played by, I'm going to get the name wrong. The actor is very good. Mahmoud Atia.
Hmm.
Again, I just butchered that name. But when he agrees to this experimental treatment, he is regressing into his mind and looking at his memories as if it's sort of a memory palace. He can interact with the world himself inside of his memories. But there's a weird creature, almost like the Exorcist creature mixed with Samara from The Ring, and it walks backwards and it has like a spider walk and it's all crackly and its bones are cracking. And I'm sitting there going, this isn't scary. This is just what my knees sound like when I get out of bed. What's scary about that? And then all the faces within his memories are blurry. Again, kind of like how the Ring, I guess, would have the faces, but not as good because this movie isn't very good.
Yeah.
And so as he's going through this memory palace, he's trying to regain his memories, and he's looking at him. He's thinking something's off. These memories don't seem right. And when he's in real life, he's with his daughter. He has the urge to smoke. And then his daughter goes, "You don't smoke." And he goes, "Oh, I thought I did." So again, things are amiss as he's going through this. You start to uncover it through the movie, through what's going on. The doctor, Felicia Rashad, you uncover her motivations as well. It suffers from the same problem that The Lie did, although without the melodrama. Not as much melodrama.
Yeah, there's a fair amount,
A fair
but
amount of melodrama.
The Lie was familial drama, and just at least this had a little bit
This
of
had a
high
mystery
concept.
to it. Yeah, this had the high concept to it, which I liked more. I think that's the reason why I liked it more, is because it was a stranger high concept. It wasn't just familial drama.
I think if this didn't identify itself as a horror film, it probably could have been good. Because I think the horror aspects are what made this terrible. Because it was trying too hard to be scary, whereas I think this would have actually done well as a psychological thriller.
Mhm.
As you start going through the film, and this isn't really a spoiler, the first memory he taps into is supposed to be his wedding. And he sees that he's in a church, but when he
Mhm.
goes home and looks at his wedding pictures, his wedding never took place in a church. It took place outside. And so he's like, okay, I'm seeing these memories that aren't mine. And this is in the trailer, of course. But I think that that's an interesting premise, is that now he's seeing what seems to be memories that are not his. But I felt like the whole creature thing was just, it had absolutely nothing to do with the story.
Why didn't you like The Crabman?
I guess we should go into spoilers before I start talking about the monster, huh?
That's true. Yeah, we'll do spoilers again
Yeah.
for this one because, again, it relies entirely on. Can't really talk about it unless you talk about the twist. Not really a twist. It's just
Yeah,
kind of a
kind of
plot
the
development.
mystery unfolding. So let's go into spoilers. Timestamps in the descriptions below. But I didn't like it because the actual mind, or whose ever consciousness was uploaded into Nolan, fell downstairs. So I thought, okay, well, maybe that's why his body's all contorted. No, because when you actually see that scene, his body
Oh,
isn't contorted.
oh yeah, that would have made sense. I didn't even think about
Yeah.
that.
And then Nolan got in a car accident. So I was like, because now you find out that that creature thing is Nolan, but Nolan wasn't contorted in the car accident because he's there standing right in front of us and he wasn't messed up like that. So it just felt like a gimmick that was wedged in there to try to feel creepy. And then the other thing was that I recognized the contortionist right off the bat. And he's this like weird, creepy dude that auditioned on America's Got Talent a while back.
Really?
Yeah, and now he just makes these random appearances online or, like, in random
No,
things
I didn't know
where he's
that.
just doing his little gimmick of moving all weird, and it's just, like, a cheap ploy. That, along with the faces being blurred out and things like that,
The faces being blurred out looked cheap. They looked like they
yeah.
were just put in on After Effects by some guy that they paid like a nickel and a half to be like, just blur it out. Or like some girl that they found in high school be like, you edit some Instagram photos, right? You should do this.
It was the producer's son, who's a high school student who took a film
Yeah,
class, who
exactly.
did that effect.
I did think it looked a little cheap.
Well, and there's no point for it other than to try to make it a horror film. But it didn't need to be a horror film. This could have easily gone the route of The Lie and just been kind of a psychological thriller,
Mhm.
or take the concept and actually make it into a full-fledged film. This is a great foundation for a good story, but it was just executed so poorly.
You know why I also don't think these two things got a lot of attention? Because they're both not good titles. The Lie is a terrible title. Black Box 2,
The
like,
Lie even sounds like a Hallmark movie. Both of them,
yeah,
really.
it does.
They're just somewhat elevated with bigger names and a little bit more budget, maybe.
Probably not.
Black Box seemed like
It
it.
looked like it had some money. I mean, Peter Sarsgaard or Joey King, they're not cheap. What did you think of the twist? Okay, not the twist though, but the development in Black Box where Dr. Lillian's dead son is taking over Nolan and takes over his body. Again, it's not really a twist because it doesn't come out of nowhere. The whole point of the movie is the build up to where Lillian's son takes over.
Yeah.
But I thought it was interesting. I liked where it was going. Like I
I
like all of these things in theory. but just
Exactly.
in execution, it just didn't work all the way for me.
No, I would agree with that. But after a while, I mean, once you hit a certain mark, everything else after that becomes very predictable. Because in the end, you know that they're going to have the physical battle in
Yeah,
the room or whatever, and then he's going to walk out the door because that was introduced in the first scene. And you're just like, okay, I mean, I
true.
know
I
where
mean
this is going at this point.
I mean, I did see Eddie Murphy do it in The Nutty Professor, so I guess these 2 basically the same movie.
One and the same. Although the Nutty Professor I thought was a little bit more intriguing than this.
The Nutty Professor is good, though. I haven't seen The Nutty Professor in a long time. Man, Eddie Murphy used to be really good.
But yeah, Black Box and The Lie, you can go your entire life without having ever seen them. Let's move on to our next film, which is Midsommar, which is Ari Aster's film. Ari Aster is the director who made Hereditary,
Mhm.
and this was his second film.
Yep.
So Midsommar is basically
Same type of thing, too. I guess this is the direction that horror is going in. And maybe this is a conversation that's gonna steer us away from the actual movie itself. But do you like this direction that horror is going? This very dramatic, one could even say again melodramatic, elevated horror again is a kind of a pejorative term that's been thrown around, but this type of pacing for horror, less pulpy. Do you like this?
I actually separate Midsummer from something like Monsterland because Monsterland was more social commentary. Midsummer is definitely not. Midsummer is more, to me, cosmic horror, in my opinion,
Okay.
because Midsummer's not necessarily social commentary. I like Midsummer. Again, when it comes to horror, I'm not a big fan of horror unless it's presented in the way that Midsummer was, because Midsummer
That's
really did.
good. These
I
last
mean,
2
it
weeks have been real
disturbed
good for
me.
you.
Oh my god, I'm not in a good place, Joe. I don't want. I hate. I hate this. I don't want to keep watching these films. I want to watch something happy.
It's so funny. After watching Midsummer 2, I had the exact same thought. I was like, why are we doing this?
Like, I was thinking that too. I was like, no, I don't think I can do the rest of this month like this.
No.
Like, honestly.
Let's just talk about The Nutty Professor for an hour next week. Let's just rewatch that.
After Midsummer, I was like, okay, I think I'm done with horror films. But Midsummer, to give you a quick synopsis, is a couple travels to Sweden to visit a rural hometown's fabled Midsummer Festival. What begins as an idyllic retreat quickly devolves into an increasingly violent and bizarre competition at the hands of a pagan cult. So basically, the main character, played by Florence Pugh,
Mhm.
her name is Danny, and the film opens with her finding out that her sister has killed herself along with her parents. She sends her this ominous email that kind of puts her on edge, but then what you find out is, what are you laughing at, Joe?
Again, just starting off with so much fun. Strap in, everybody. Strap in for the laughs.
Yeah, Midsummer is going to be a fun ride.
Minute 1. All right. Girl's family all kills herself. Go.
Dude, I mean, the anxiety and tension right off the bat.
This thing's 2.5 hours.
Oh my lord.
So I've seen Midsummer before. This is your first time watching it.
Yeah, I stayed away from it because Hereditary messed me up, bro.
Exactly, and I know you don't like cult stuff, you don't like demon stuff, although
No, I
this
don't
isn't
mind.
demon cults, so it's
Yeah, no, I
different.
don't mind cult stuff. Like, this disturbed me, but it didn't have the effect that Hereditary did.
These are
So
okay cults. This is a
yeah,
fine cult.
I don't have no problem with cults. It's
Okay.
just demonic crap. I cannot do demons and devils worship stuff that I will stay away from.
Okay, no
Midsummer though, whatever. This is just pagan stuff. It doesn't affect me.
very pale white people just in a field, perfectly okay.
Yeah, if anything, I was more concerned for the black man in this village, just for pure racial reasons, because I'm too used to watching Jordan Peele stuff.
Yeah, right. Hey, I don't know if we're gonna get into spoilers, but it's a horror movie. Things don't go well for really anybody, but you
Yeah,
can't have that many pale white people in a field and
and
then
expect to be okay walking around all colored and
and exactly. He's the opposite of very pale and white. Really, I would have a problem being Italian. They're like, you're a little too golden brown.
I was actually thinking about you. I really would love to see you in that. Forget like the whole,
Pagan cult.
pagan cult stuff, but just in that environment of like everyone being all communal and like wearing flowery,
White flowy robes,
yeah, just
and just
super happy and welcoming.
dancing around. Like, my God.
Oh god. Anyway, I will say though, the thing that scares me most about Ari Aster's films is the details he infuses in his work. because they allude to an underlying notion that he knows exactly what he's doing, and it takes a certain understanding of how an audience will experience something, whether it's visuals or sound, that gives him the ability to control your experience in the way that I don't think I've ever experienced with any other director. I'm not being hyperbolic when I say I can't recall a director or any films that really have caused such a visceral and physical reaction.
I think with a horror movie, it's different. I think somebody like a Martin Scorsese does it in Goodfellas, but does it in a different way, right? The the sequence of Layla or the sequence where the chopper is following them, that is
Yeah.
a very visceral reaction too, and it brings you inside yourself, but it's fun, right? And you're feeling the tension of him and the tension is wrapping up and he's trying to do 10 things at once in that, and you really feel it. And I think that's what makes Goodfellas so incredible. That feeling is transplanted in a horrific way in this movie. Like, think about it,
But
the same type of skill.
I agree in that there are so many directors who are masters at putting you. I mean, David Fincher is one of those people. You feel as though he's hijacking your eyes in a
Mm.
sense because he's a good director. I mean, any good director is going to be able to allow you to experience things in a very kind of visceral manner to go back to what we were saying. But this, like, I'm literally feeling uncomfortable in my own skin, and not in an emotional way or in an empathetic way. It's an actual physical reaction. And I think that this type of horror affects me in a way that I don't think any other horror really does.
Did you feel that way? We talked about The Lighthouse a few weeks ago. Did you feel that way during The Lighthouse?
No, because The Lighthouse was disturbing and uncomfortable, but this was, forget about the psychedelic visuals for a second because that's an obvious thing, but I found that I was most affected by the sound mixing,
Mm.
because sound mixing isn't really a thing that's at the top of my list or even our list when we're talking about experiencing films, but
With horror, though, it's so crucial.
it's crucial. But he did it in a way that usually horror, like he had the obvious smash cuts to like a loud sound or a phone ringing and things like that. But it was specifically in the scene where they're dancing around the Midsummer pole. It would lull you into submission and then disorient you. He kept changing the perspectives between Christian, who's on the outside, with Danny, who's immersed in the
In the
situation.
middle.
The sound design in that actually made me second guess whether I was hearing things or if it was a film.
Right.
And then you'll look at an image and then you'll see that something just moves in the corner,
Mhm.
but it's really just warping. And then I would rewind it to see when it started because I only noticed it 15 seconds later, but
So
it
it
had
took
been
you
doing
it
it
took
since.
you 4 hours to watch this movie is what you're
No,
saying.
I kept rewinding it and like, oh my god, yeah, this movie was I wouldn't say the most fun to watch.
It's not fun, but man, is it immersive, just like you said.
Yeah,
This guy, he really does know in a way that he does it the best. He does it the best of this type of presentational horror of anybody. Maybe Robert Eggers does it in The Lighthouse too. I liked Midsummer. I had a much more visceral reaction. We said the word visceral a lot this episode, but it's really the best way to describe it
yeah,
to Hereditary, especially the ending, because Hereditary is more horrific on the surface, whereas I think Midsummer is more horrific cerebrally. It had more realism to it. At the end of Hereditary, it breaks the realism of the world. It brings supernatural things into it. I don't want to spoil Hereditary for anybody who hasn't seen it, but it brings supernatural elements to it. This doesn't really have the supernatural. It just
no.
has creepy Swedish people in a field and they will kill you. And really, anybody could be a creepy Swedish person in a field who wants to kill you. You can just be walking down the street and find one of those.
It was the visuals and the sound design that really had a physical effect, and that's what he was going for. It really felt like a drug-induced psychedelic
A
trip
fever
the
dream.
entire time. Yeah. Whereas Hereditary, I mean, Hereditary is messed up in ways that I could never watch again.
No, you're not going to turn that one on a Friday night. Be like, hey guys, come on down to Andrew's place. We're going to throw on Hereditary.
I do want to see it again because I really did think that it was done very well, and I really liked Midsummer. I thought Midsummer was so well directed. I mean, there's no denying that Ari Aster is both a great filmmaker and a goddamn psychopath because both his films or all of his films thus far have messed me up in ways I can't explain necessarily. But as far as the content of the film, I like the depiction of the two contrasting worlds between the American kids and then the Harga people or the Swedish people.
Yeah.
And the way that the American kids are kind of viewing everything from the outside and more removed and observing them in this condescending way almost.
At the very beginning. And then that
Yeah.
veneer drops off, especially in the midpoint, really, of the movie, where they start to see them for what they really are. and
Yeah.
they're all sitting, the 4 of them, eating, not talking, and all just kind of looking disgusted with one another.
I think it alludes to the larger theme of unity and separation. I think that's the main duality of the entire film because I think the beginning of the film really tells you how alone Danny is. Most of the dialogue scenes in the first act are played out through mirrors, and it's creating this separation between the characters, but also that they're not having a conversation from a place any deeper than the two-dimensional superficial thing that we see in the mirror. And the people around her don't comfort her when her family dies, and her boyfriend only really sticks around because that's what he feels like a nice guy would have to
He
do
has
in
to
a
do it. He feels
sense.
obligated.
Exactly. Like it's very disingenuous. Even in the first scene when we see Danny talking to Christian, her boyfriend, they're on the phone, again, more separation, and it's over an ominous email that she received from his sister. Again, more separation from her sister. They're communicating through email. Who
Mhm.
communicates through email? But then the dialogue scene, we never cut away to him. And that just gives you a further impression of his lack of presence in her life and his separation from her. In contrast, the Harga community is almost unnerving how close knit they are, and that almost every experience is shared, be it pain or an orgasm. But for Danny, I mean, that's what she needs, right? After
Family.
yeah,
That's the
she
whole
needs
point of the
family, she
movie.
needs someone to empathize with her. It's literally the antithesis of the world that she comes from.
It's funny that you mentioned emails too. I'm gonna go back to the lie. I remember there's a point in the lie where somebody gets
Oh,
an
she
email.
no, don't.
I remember I said, "Do 15-year-old girls really communicate via email now? It's been a while since I've been 15."
Like, it would've been so much better as we have your TikTok
Yeah,
conversation
exactly.
transcripts here.
That's right. It was when they're talking to the cops, and you go,
Yeah.
"We've got the emails that they sent, and she threatened her over email." I was like, "That's not true."
I was like, yeah,
They
if you
What are
had,
they
like,
using, a
screenshots
Hotmail account?
of, like, a Instagram or use her AIM transcripts.
Yes. We got him.
Yeah. Oh
I'm gonna
god.
kill you. Knife emoji, smiley face.
Apparently, emojis now can be submitted in a court of like, submitted as
What?
evidence, yeah.
Really?
Like, they actually had to make a determination over this because kids were using emojis to hide plans of either drug
Smart.
use or it's like, now we can submit poopy face emojis into
Yeah.
the court of law.
Also, to go back to the lie, we're gonna continue with Midsummer, but I remember just how ridiculous the lie was. Man, the lie is providing us with a lot of fun. There's
Yeah.
a part where Peter Sarsgaard's character goes, "Okay, they're trying to come up with the plan, right?" And he says to Joey King's character, he goes, "Okay, nobody knows that we were there. We're gonna hide this." And I'm like, bro, my dude, have you ever seen an episode of CSI or NYPD Blue or any cop show? I'm like, there's 4 things off the top of my head that link you to the crime. A truck passed you and saw you. Your girlfriend knows you're going. The mom's boyfriend knows you're going. The phones have GPS on them. I'm like, my dude, everyone knows you were there. Everyone.
I agree. Like, we're sitting there, we're watching this. The girl didn't come back with her inhaler.
No.
I mean, she left her inhaler at the place, and your car, even just the tire marks. We know
Yes.
too much. I've watched too many murder documentaries on Netflix to know how this is going to turn out for
This
you,
is
buddy.
basic stuff, guy. Come
And
on.
then right after they say, "Oh, we pinged her phone in downtown. Isn't that where your husband lives?" They go to the dude's
Yeah.
house with their own cell phones, and then
Yes.
apparently the wife used to be a prosecutor for the city.
She would know,
Like, she's supposed to be a professional, and she's
right?
calling him?
Like, this is CSI 101. Like, you don't talk on cell phones, no communication. They can trace the calls. Come on, man.
But no, hey, she covered her tracks by throwing her shirt in the fire
Right?
outside. Why didn't you use the fireplace inside?
It's just
If
gonna
a
turn
neighbor happened to look
look
outside.
outside.
And what is a shirt gonna give anyone? A ripped shirt.
I mean, it could have provided evidence, I guess, but don't steal outside. Like, burn it
Nobody knows she was
inside.
wearing that,
That's true.
right? So, like, it's just like, oh, she's smart. Like, you haven't established anything. You're an idiot.
Exactly. Everyone's an idiot.
Anyway, going
Back to Midsummer.
back to the Harga commune.
We're doing spoilers now.
Yeah.
After that, aside, spoilers for Midsummer. Jump off if you don't want to. It's really good. People should see it, and then contemplate your life afterwards.
Or don't.
Or
Just go
don't.
watch Ted
Better
Lasso.
exactly. Or just throw in the Nutty Professor.
What was I saying?
What were you saying?
I was saying that because the world that she comes from is basically based on arbitrary factors that we use to create barriers. And it clearly plays out when, as soon as there's an accusation of their holy book being stolen, Christian immediately distances himself from Josh. And in that moment, you see Danny kind of stare at him like in awe at the willingness,
Be like, dude, what are you doing?
yeah, to just throw his friend under the bus. And in that moment, she's standing between Christian and Pell. And Christian, on one hand, says, "Oh, I'm so sorry. We're not friends with him. We're not blah, blah, blah."
Hmm.
And then Pell goes, "I feel responsible and I want to make up for this." And so you see the two worlds, and she's literally caught between visually and emotionally of which life does she want to choose. A life where people empathize with your pain, empathize with your joy, or a world where people will literally cut you off as soon as it does not serve them. I mean, if there's going to be any social commentary, that might be it, but
Or the dangers of wearing a bear costume and being set on fire.
or the dangers of being a furry. Yeah.
Also true. Or, hey, what we've learned is that you shouldn't take pictures of the holy book because someone dressed in another man's face will bash you in the head like Super Mario Brothers, is what I'm saying. By the way, Josh was played by William Jackson Harper, where he plays Chidi on The Good Place. Such a different tone. And rewatching this, he's now Chidi to me.
Yeah.
So I'm just sitting there going, Chidi, what are you doing? Why are you being such an asshole about things?
And then Will Poulter's character is like such a douche.
They're just so reprehensible. Really,
Oh
all of
my
them.
God.
I would have set them on fire too.
Well, that's the thing is, as soon as she gets crowned and she's sitting in the chair at the head of the table, you almost feel like, I'm happy for you.
Yeah, right?
Like, I was like, she
You wear
needs
that
this.
crown, Danny.
It's funny. I was watching an interview with Ari Aster, and the guy's like, I just want to first start with asking, do you think that this had a happy ending? And
It
he's just
depends on
like,
how you look at it, though.
I think it
She
did.
finds a family. She finds where she belongs. She's
She
named
had the
the
arc.
queen. Exactly.
Yeah.
She really did. It's a really happy ending for her. Not so much everybody else, but it
Ugh,
really
it's
worked out
just-
for her.
Yeah, definitely. I like this a lot.
I liked it a lot, but I never need to watch it again. This is the second time I've watched it.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to turn this one on again.
The visuals were striking, though.
It's absolutely gorgeous to look at,
Like
and
the
it's so rare.
grandparents jumping.
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh,
just like that location too was unnervingly beautiful. And then just the way that it looked when you see her bounce off of the rock.
and then the sound design of just splat.
Oh, and the grandfather who didn't die.
Just
Oh my
squirming.
lord. But also the guy that was splayed open in the barn, and his lungs are pulled out from his back and they're still breathing.
Yeah.
And that scene in the mating ritual was so weird.
I was gonna say an orgy, but it's not an orgy. It's
No, it's
just a
not.
bunch of people watching a mating ritual and then getting oddly involved. They were
Yeah,
very
the-
involved.
The old ladies. And that would be a really funny parody. Is like, the old lady that goes to the back and starts pushing his ass.
She
Like,
was.
in her, and then he's just like, I got this.
Yeah.
You don't need to do that.
Okay,
I'm
she's like, no, I
No, no.
exist.
I'm gonna help. Look, this is worth a watch. It's a great film. Very, very well made.
It's so rare also that it's a horror movie set entirely in daylight. Anytime you read anything about this, that's not a new point. I'm not saying anything that hasn't been written about this 1,000 times, but seeing something that is so horrific and so horror based in all daylight is rare. And I think it's worth the watch just to see how that gets pulled off.
Well, I think it has a lot to do with insomnia. The claustrophobia that comes from it never getting dark as well.
Yes.
I remember you saying that, and where the world that she came from was very dark and very cold. You come to this place where it's light all the time, and even Mark, Will Poulter's character, he's like, "Oh, it doesn't get dark," and he's tripping on mushrooms. He's like, "I don't like that. I don't
Yeah.
lie down. Hey, Josh, lie down with me. Are you gonna lie down?" He was just such a little turd, and just seeing him like have a bad trip was so funny. I thought Florence Pugh was phenomenal.
She really was. And she carried the whole thing
You feel her anxiety.
the whole time. And the last shot of her smiling, looking at the burning down building, just the look of distance
Mhm.
and yet also
Relief.
overjoy and relief.
Yeah.
All of it. You can see all of it on her face at the exact same moment.
Yeah, just the remnants of her old life slowly burning away.
It's definitely worth a watch. I wasn't going to say that I really liked it. I did really like it. I didn't enjoy watching it a lot all the time.
Yeah, and that's a clear distinction with his films is I'm watching it, I'm like, "Oh, he's really good at his composition, his use of sound, his use of color, everything." I mean, he's a very talented filmmaker, but I do not like watching his films.
You know what's going to happen to this guy next? You know what I bet's going to happen? They're going to give him a Star Wars.
I was literally hoping you weren't gonna say that.
That's what's gonna happen next. That's what happens.
Anyway, let's move on to something a little bit lighter and fun, which was Guillermo del Toro's 2015 film Crimson Peak.
You know, the haunted house melodrama where there's tons of blood everywhere. A light, fun jaunt compared to Midsummer.
I actually Crimson Peak was fun. I
It is
mean, it was
fun. No,
very pulpy and
Crimson
it
Peak is really fun. I'm not gonna bury the lead at all. I
yeah,
loved Crimson Peak.
it's a lot of fun. It's sweet.
This is the first time I'd seen Crimson Peak. I had not seen it before this watch. Have you seen it?
No, I regret not watching it. I
Me
regret
too.
even allowing just a little bit of the criticism that was placed at its feet to keep me from watching it because I really
What criticism did you hear from it?
people did not like this because
Really?
again, people went in expecting a horror film, rightfully so. That was how it was marketed, which is understandable, right? It's got ghosts, it's got a decrepit mansion, but going into a Guillermo del Toro film, you should know that it's not going to be a straightforward horror film, and if anything, the ghosts or the creatures are going to be far less monstrous than the people themselves. And
Mhm.
we've said this before, Del Toro has more love for the monsters in his films, and this was, if anything, a love letter to the gothic horror genre or ghost stories in
It's a
general.
throwback to a genre that doesn't exist
Yeah,
anymore, and I
yeah.
loved it. I loved that
Oh, it's so much. It's so
it's a
great.
throwback to those sort of melodramatic, and this is where when we were talking about The Lie, and I said we're gonna talk about melodrama that's done well, this is wonderful
Mhm.
melodrama.
Because this was intentional and was almost
Yes.
self-aware.
Oh, it's absolutely done intentionally because
Yeah,
it's trying to be that type of movie.
exactly. It's trying to emulate the genre in which inspired it in a sense,
Do you
and
think that if people didn't know that going in, and this is probably what you were saying and what people that you talked to said, is that they didn't know what it was supposed to be, and so getting this very heightened and very, very high-pitched melodrama when they weren't expecting it, they're thinking they're going, "Well, is this how it's supposed to be, or is this just bad?"
from everything that I read and from just hearing the opinions of people online or even just people I knew, I bet the scene where Edith's character is pitching her ghost novel to the publisher is literally exactly how it played out when Guillermo del Toro brought this film to the studio.
Guaranteed. I had that exact thought. If you haven't seen it, again, it follows Mia Wasikowska's character, Edith Cushing, set in the early 1900s. I think it's set in two time periods, 1887 and 1901, very Victorian era. She plays a aspiring author, aspiring novelist, who is also the heir to a it's not a textile family, it's essentially a building though. Her father owns a construction company.
Well, he's a businessman. He's like a prominent
Businessman, kind of
businessman
like a
who
tycoon type.
yeah, like he's part of this group of other tycoons and barons of the time.
Barons,
Yeah, that fund bigger projects and things like that.
exactly. And Tom Hiddleston plays a baronet who is coming to her father asking for money for a machine that can dig up clay. And she gets whisked away by Tom Hiddleston's character to his family estate, which is very, very big and very old and falling apart.
So the house is basically built upon the land in which he wants to extract this clay. The house is literally sinking into the well, in a sense, of this red clay. And the old decrepit home is very reminiscent of just Gothic horror in general. There's always either a mansion or a castle that's falling
Oh,
apart.
yes. And Thomas Sharp is the
Yeah.
character Tom Hiddleston played, and he is the last of the family. He and his sister, played by Jessica Chastain, Lucille Sharp, they are brother and sister. They are the last of this family that clearly owned this land, but they're bankrupt. So that's why they're seeking funding for this machine. Now, the reason why I go through that very long preamble is because I don't think that if you were to read the synopsis on IMDb, it would properly introduce the actual what the movie is about. Because really, I'll read the IMDb synopsis as well. In the aftermath of a family tragedy, an aspiring author is torn between love for her childhood friend and the temptation of a mysterious outsider. Trying to escape the ghosts of her past, she is swept away to a house that breathes, bleeds, and remembers. Now,
Well, that's funny that's in there because I was literally going to say the house really plays a character because it literally breathes and bleeds.
exactly. And the childhood friend that they're referring to in that synopsis is
It's
Charlie
the
Hunnam,
doctor.
the doctor
Yeah.
played by Charlie Hunnam. But again, I don't think that paints the best picture of to why that happens, and that's a sort of very very opaque way of describing this movie because that's not really it. I would not use that to describe this movie.
The scene that describes this movie perfectly, and I think it's literally the line that Guillermo del Toro told the studio head when he was trying to get this greenlit, is it's not a ghost story necessarily. It's more a story with a ghost in it, and the
Yes.
ghost is just a metaphor for the past. And Mia Wasikowska is basically a piece of Guillermo del Toro in this because though at times she is frightened by the ghosts, she has more of a curiosity towards them.
She's not ever afraid of them, so that's where this is more of a subversion of the ghost trappings or a
There
ghost
are
movie
times
trap.
where she's kind of
She's more
freaked out,
intrigued.
but just as intrigued because she understands that they carry memories, they are a metaphor for the past. I mean, she writes about it, so it's almost as though she has a love for them already
Mhm,
and experiences a lot of encounters with her mother's ghost as well, who warns her later about Crimson Peak, you know, and,
mhm. The titular
but
Crimson Peak, because her mother is
yeah.
dead and she lives with her father, the owner of the company, has all the money, for this company that Tom Hiddleston is, again, trying to get funding for.
And she even after she sees the first ghost at Crimson Peak in the mansion, she goes to Tom Hiddleston and she says, "Did anyone die in a specific horrific way in this house?" So it's almost as though she has a clear understanding as to why ghosts hang around, and it's not because of anything that's malicious, it's more of an echo in time.
I thought it was perfectly cast. What did you think of Mia Wasikowska as the lead?
I thought she was so great, and I like her a lot.
She was the perfect person for this
Yeah.
because her complexion, she is like a porcelain doll. And
Yeah.
everything about kind of the way that she acts, the way she moves in it, she's not a damsel in distress at all. She's very capable and she's clearly her character is extremely intelligent, but she also has this old-timey Hollywood veneer that
Yeah.
fits so perfectly with the tone that Del Toro is trying to create.
I agree, and I think their casting was perfect because I could buy their sort of doe-eyed naivete, and although they sort of fall for each other relatively quickly, it still felt earned because they both have a dream. Edith as a writer, Thomas as an inventor, but the catalyst to her attraction is that Edith's first encounter with Tom is when her father completely rejects his pitch for funding on the same day her book was rejected for publishing. So, although it seemed as though it happened over the course of maybe one scene or two scenes, the scenes were emotionally relevant enough to them respectively that it warrants their attraction to one another. On the other hand, Tom's chemistry with Jessica Chastain was great as
Oh, she's
well.
so incredible too as this. She's so bordering on camp in this. It's so wonderful.
Yeah, I agree. It was as if they knew they were in a gothic novel, and I almost enjoyed how self-aware it was because it allowed Del Toro to thoroughly explore the genre.
Yeah, it's not one of those things where you're looking for realism. It's not supposed to be
No,
real.
it's supposed to be a fairy tale.
They're
Yeah,
acting, and
yeah,
that's acting in the biggest sense because
yeah.
everything in this is so bombastic. The set design, the acting, the performances, the sound and the music, and it's just got this bomba 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 score.
Well, and when she's feeding her the porridge, I mean, it's over the
Yes.
top because like, the screeching
It's
with the spoon against the bowl, and you're like, "Oh, okay." I mean, it is something that you would literally read in the text.
and I think that might be why people didn't like this maybe is because there's not enough ghosts for the ghost movie that they were promised or the trailers promised.
No, there are
Do you
plenty
think
of
that's why?
ghosts. They were just really nice ghosts
That's
and were
true.
really,
So there weren't enough scary ghosts. Maybe do you think that's why people felt slighted by it? Is that the ghosts weren't as malicious as most ghosts are in most ghost movies? This isn't Amityville Horror.
well, that's the thing is the ghosts were never the point of the story, and he literally says that in the beginning. It's not a ghost story. There
Yeah.
happens to be ghosts in this house, you know, and I forgot how gruesome Del Toro can be when the father gets
There's a lot of blood in this.
yeah.
There is a lot of gore.
Well, we should go into spoilers now. We've given a good foundation as to what the story is about, but
Mhm.
a lot of the images in this are really striking. I mean, you look at Tom Hiddleston at the end with the hole in his face and it's bleeding out into the air. It is hauntingly beautiful.
Mhm. Did you immediately know that Tom Hiddleston's character and Jessica Chastain, Thomas and Lucille were
Incestual?
incestuous?
Yeah, I mean, they kissed on the lips in the ballroom in one of the first
I
scenes
guess
when they're
that's
in
true.
America.
They don't really try to hide it.
Again, yeah, it's not even a mystery
They don't.
necessarily. It's more of the why that you're waiting for, why they're doing this, and you realize that, okay, well, they've done this multiple
It's
times.
a Black Widow scenario, but with both of
Yeah.
them.
And so you weren't surprised when she walks in on them because of how Jessica Chastain acted when she found out that they slept together.
Mhm. You mean me when, Mia Wasikowska did?
When she walked in with the yeah, well,
Yeah.
when Jessica Chastain found out Mia and Tom
Oh, you
Hiddleston
mean yeah, yeah,
slept
yeah.
together and she, like, slams the pot of eggs
Yes.
And she's, like, pissed off, and she's like, "Why are you pissed, dude? Like, we're married." And she's always prying and trying to find out if
Uh-huh.
they've, done the dirty. Turns out yeah,
Just so I love how everything Jessica Chastain says in this is just tipped with acid. Like, everything
yeah,
she says.
yeah,
She's just such a kind of like not a cackling villain, but so villainous in a great way. Even at the very beginning when
yeah,
Thomas Sharp breaks up with for the first time Edith,
mhm.
right? And breaks her heart like her father told him to do. She Lucille, Jessica Chastain, is framed in the doorway as
In
one of
the
the
dark.
in the
Yeah,
dark as like
yeah,
a ghost, as this sort of
yeah.
malicious figure.
Wearing a giant red flower. They're
Yes.
both wearing black. I mean, it is overt to the point where it's almost like he's like, "I know."
Every everything that Mia Wasikowska wears, I think
It's
the
so
arms, the big poofiness, everything just gets poofier as the movie goes on.
yeah, yeah.
All of it. She could eventually just like fly down off the top of a building, Mary Poppins style, with the poofiness of her dresses.
The poof thickens as the plot thickens.
So, did you know? Because I was doing a little bit of research. The original choices for Thomas and Edith were going to be Emma Stone and Benedict Cumberbatch.
I remember Emma Stone, but I didn't know Benedict see, I liked it with these 2 a
I
lot
don't
more.
s and I don't think it could have worked with either Emma Stone or Benedict Cumberbatch because I don't think Benedict Cumberbatch has the natural charisma seems mean. That sounds mean to say, but Tom Hiddleston has that sort of oily charisma, that Loki charisma, right? And I don't mean low key. I mean Loki like from The Mask, Jim Carrey's The
Yeah,
Mask, obviously. You know, that Loki.
of course. I think that both Emma Stone and Benedict Cumberbatch come off as too knowing or too intelligent,
Too
like
winky. Like they would have
yeah, like
played to the camera.
street smart,
Yeah,
exactly. Whereas Mia and Tom, like I said, were
played it straight.
you can believe that they could be naive, whereas Emma's too funny and too smart.
It feels like Emma Stone would have been too winky toward the camera.
Yeah.
What did you think of Charlie Hunnam as the Doctor as well?
At first, I thought he was somewhat unnecessary, but as the story progresses, you sort of see how he pushes the story forward. And through him, a lot of the key pieces of information about the mystery are revealed. And honestly, I would love his character just for that moment where Tom Hiddleston is forced by Chastain to stab him and he whispers to him, "You're a doctor, tell me where." And it's
Mhm.
such a great character moment for Tom. But I definitely did begin to like him a lot more as the story went on. And I think you were supposed to.
I think you were too, because at first I found him distracting and I thought he was a little bit out of place.
Yeah.
And I thought he was a little stiff and seemed almost too modern,
Cliche or yeah,
cliche and
modern,
modern.
yeah.
But then I started thinking about it and I started thinking the type of movie that this is has that character who
Yeah,
feels like the really handsome doctor.
yeah,
And that's exactly the type of actor that they would get
exactly.
in that.
Yeah,
So he's perfect for it in that way of sticking out too much.
yeah, he looks like if Brad Pitt and Macklemore had a love child.
Yeah. Kinda. Like, I think everything about this movie, it knew exactly what it was, even down to the
Yeah,
casting. Everything
yeah,
about it. And it
yeah.
was funny too. I mean, there was the moment where Edith is in the tub and she's looking down the hall and she thinks she hears some ghost action down there and she's like, "Ah, I don't know what's
Oh,
going
yeah.
on." And then the ghost kind of leans in and looks at her and then just kind of
That
like pops back out of frame like a Scooby-Doo cartoon.
that part was creepy though, like, I mean, just
Oh, I thought it
it
was
just,
funny.
like, kind of, like, coming around the corner, but it really was, like, that moment where, like, "Oh, she's looking at me," and then
Yeah,
it's like
exactly.
like, it turned back, yeah, like
Like, "Oh, did she see me? I don't know. Let me
yeah.
look back again."
But that ghost is freaky, like, with
It was
the
a great
face caved
design.
in.
It was a great
Yeah,
design. And the twist of the ghosts not being malevolent, like I said, and
yeah,
warning her was a
yeah.
nice twist too.
Well, and the dog and the red
Mhm.
ball.
That dog too, I like the dog. I mean, I
Mhm.
liked that the dog belonged to one of the victims
Yeah.
and that she finds the key. Then again, Jessica Chastain's character, again, terrible at covering up murders. Why are you keeping the keys? Destroy the evidence. Haven't you ever seen an episode of CSI in 1901? Come on.
Well, doesn't matter. She's gonna die anyway, so she doesn't need to cover up anything,
That's
really.
true, and that house is in the middle of nowhere. They would see the cops coming. They'd have, like, 20 minutes. She could just call
Y
down, be like, "Hey, Tom, the cops are coming. Toss the trunk out the back."
Yeah.
Then he's like, "How long do we have?" And they're like, "No, a lot of time. Just finish what you're doing."
I mean, you even knew the tea was poisoned from the moment you saw it.
100%.
And that's the thing is, again, it's so self-aware and intentional in everything it's doing, but you're still okay with it because you're
Because
just
it's so
enjoying the
much
ride. Yeah,
fun. That
exactly.
I would describe this movie as a lot of fun.
Yeah.
This is a movie where you could put it on and have people over just because
Yeah.
of the bombast and the bigness and the fun nature of it and the camp of it.
I mean, even just the scene with the father, I mean, it reminds me of Pan's Labyrinth when the guy gets his face bashed in with the bottle.
You know, a lot of the imagery in this is very Pan's Labyrinth, and especially
Yeah.
Tom Hiddleston's ghost at the end. It looks a lot like the ghost in Devil's Backbone, which was one of Guillermo del Toro's earlier works too. The visuals are very similar.
Yeah, that's true. Overall, though, Crimson Peak is a fun watch.
It is a lot of fun. It's so much fun.
And it comes with everything you'd expect from a Del Toro film. But I think that about wraps this week's episode.
I think so.
We love to hear from all of you. If you've watched The Lie, Black Box, Midsommar, or Crimson Peak, let us know what you thought and if you agreed or disagreed with anything we discuss. Catch us next week where we'll continue the Halloween theme and explore our favorite aspects of the zombie genre, be it television, books, films, and video games, as well as our top 3 zombie films. As we've mentioned before, we are shooting to reach 1,000 subscribers on YouTube to become partners, so if you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing. If you have any ideas for a theme you'd like us to discuss, or a film, TV show, anything pop culture, let us know on YouTube, Instagram, or Twitter. You can find all those links on channel8.5.com. That's channel8.5, completely spelled out.com.
We have new episodes every Thursday. Until next time, my name is Joe Galino.
And I'm Andrew Hanna, and this is Channel 8.5.